Hello and good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet in person yet, my name is Katherine Presutti and I'm the Director of Student Financial Aid here at the University of Hartford. And I'm going to be presenting to you this evening along with my co-host, and I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
Right now. Hi, I'm Katie Kitchens. I'm the Assistant Vice President in the Division of Student Success. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the topics that Katherine is covering with financial aid, and I'll build on that with talking about the billing process.
Thank you, Katie. So just a couple of things before we get started. First of all, we are recording the presentation this evening. So if you do have to scoot out, we do know we're competing with some other webinars this evening. Please don't feel like you can't do that. We will certainly be sharing lots more information about this as we move through the rest of the summer. In addition, I want to mention just a couple of things regarding the question and answer session of our webinar this evening. You do have two functions available to you. One of them is the Q&A function. The other is the chat feature. We will ask that you hold your questions until we reach the Q&A portion, and I promise we will have lots of time for that as we move through the presentation this evening. But we do ask that when you do have questions at the end of the presentation, you use the Q&A function rather than the chat. Keeps it nice and clean for Katie and I to make sure that we're getting all of your questions answered as we move through the presentation. So just quickly, a brief agenda and some things that we're going to go over this evening. First and foremost, we're going to start with just some general university resources, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the financial aid process, getting to know more about lots of things that you've probably already gone through in terms of, how we package financial aid. But we're going to give you some more information about ways that you can help use financial aid to cover any costs. And then Katie's going to go into some lots of information regarding just the billing process and what you can expect as we move through the summer in regards to billing.
So to kick us off, I just want to make everybody aware of a really important portal that your student should have access to already, and hopefully has already used to fill out their housing application or to view other important documents. But this is the Student Self-Service Center. They would have received information about how to sign into this if they attended one of the first 3 orientation sessions, and otherwise there is a lot of information posted on the checklist webpage. So hartford.edu/checklist. If they haven't already checked out that site or checked out the Student Self-Service Center, I highly encourage you to look at that with them and really just walk through some of the important features that it has. And we'll get into a little more detail about what some of those features are. But this is the hub where they can register for classes, which they won't do for this fall because we're taking care of that for them. But in future semesters, they will use it for that. They'll also be able to view and make payments on their bill through there, view any holes that they might have, accept their financial aid award, and add a parent or guardian to the FERPA, which we'll talk about now. So the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act basically is designed to do a couple of things. And you may have been familiar with this from the K-12 environment, that this basically protects the privacy of the educational record. When the student is in elementary school, middle school, high school, this protects the record and the student and the parent have access to the record, but other people without a legitimate educational need do not. When the student matriculates in college, it is only the student that has access to their educational record. So even parents do not generally have access to that record unless the student chooses to give it to you. So what we have in place at the university is we have a FERPA waiver. So essentially the student can designate one or more people to receive access to their education record by going through self-service and adding whomever they choose to add. So at the orientation sessions, we would have walked students through this. We'll walk through students through it in August if they didn't come to one of the June sessions. But you can also look at this with them through the self-service center. And we really want students to be adding people to the FERPA. This doesn't mean that you're going to get a report card, but it does mean that if you give us a call and you have questions about the bill, about their academics, about what's going on in the residence halls, we can have those conversations with you and release certain information that we wouldn't be able to release without this on file. So we think this is really important so that we can partner with you to help your student. And I will also put in a plug for the Center for Student Success. That's my area. And we are the first year advising center. If you have already been to orientation or your student has been to orientation, you've heard all about us, or maybe you've heard about us through some other way. This is the center through which your student will get a first year advisor for all of our incoming first year students. Our transfer students get an advisor through their college and through their major. The Center for Student Success is all about first year advising, but it's total advising. So we do talk with your student about classes and what classes to select to stay on track in their program. That's sort of the traditional advising model, but we're also working with students on those financial and administrative needs. We're working with students on time management and study strategies and that transition and acclimation to college. They're going to be taught in their first semester by their first year advisor. They're going to have a success seminar class together once a week. So they can't hide from their advisor. They're going to see them a lot, and just to generally help acclimate them to campus. But they can also come and drop by and see us. They don't need an appointment. They can just ping us in the Center for Student Success anytime.
So Katie got to talk a little bit about the Center for Student Success. And so now this is my turn to plug a little bit about the Office of Student Financial Aid on campus. For those of you who have already visited campus, which I'm sure that many of you have probably visited the Office of Student Financial Aid maybe without even realizing, because the Office of Financial Aid does share an office with our Office of Undergraduate Admissions. So we are the White House with red shutters on campus. I promise we are the only White House with red shutters on campus, so you can't miss us. We are open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And our contact information is also on the screen. I will say during the summer months, we are closing on Fridays at 3 p.m., but certainly available via email or phone call during regular business hours. Just a brief overview quickly about regarding our financial aid staff. So the financial aid staff is divided by school or college in which the student has been admitted or pursuing a degree in. So each student is assigned a financial aid counselor, so to speak, that will help with them with all of their financial aid needs. So things like, what are my costs? What do my costs look like? Am I meeting minimum academic requirements to renew my scholarship? They have questions about borrowing on a loan or how the loan process works. They'll meet with their financial aid counselor to go over all of that. Again, it's broken up by school or college, and I have that listed on the screen now. Of course, if a student walks into our office, which we always accept walk-ins, and their financial aid counselor is not available, the full financial aid team is cross-trained to help answer questions no matter what the school or college is, so they can always just come to us and we will make sure that someone gets them the answer to their questions. We do have Spanish-speaking counselors available as well, so if a parent or a student is more comfortable speaking in Spanish, we certainly can accommodate that also. So just to kick it off, what is financial aid? If we were doing this presentation in person, I would ask for a show of hands at this point to what comes to mind when you're thinking about the financial aid process? First and foremost, how many people think of grants when they think of financial aid? I'm sure that lots of hands go up. How many people think about scholarships? I'm sure, again, lots of hands go up when we're talking about scholarships. Loans. A few less hands go up, but some continue to rise. Student and parent loans. And then employment opportunities. So maybe it's work study or some other type of on-campus part-time employment. The Office of Financial Aid at the University of Hartford helps students with all of these things. So the majority of our students are using a combination of grants, scholarships, loans, and employment opportunities to help cover their higher educational costs. And it is the role of the Financial Aid Office to help walk students through that process and assist them with whatever they may need. So just continuing on regarding the financial aid process, when a student is admitted to the University of Hartford, they are automatically reviewed for both academic and talent awards based on their major. And it is based on the admission requirements that they submit to the university. So that would include GPA, SAT scores, maybe a class rank. For some of our schools and colleges, maybe it is based on a portfolio review or an audition on campus. So students, when they are admitted to the university, are automatically reviewed for these and would find out at their time of admission how much their academic and talent award is. Now, what I do want to just focus on mostly in regards to this is the renewability criteria of these awards. I'm going to go into some further detail about it a little bit later on in the presentation, but I do just want to make mention that there are GPA requirements for all of our academic and talent awards. In some cases, it's just meeting minimum academic standards, which again, I'm going to go into a little bit more about later. In some cases, it's a higher GPA threshold, like a 3.0 or a 3.25. It is up to the student to know what their GPA threshold is in order to renew their scholarship from academic year to academic year, but certainly they can reach out to their financial aid counselor who can help walk them through that as well. Katie talked a little bit about the self-service center as we began the presentation this evening. And if a student logs into the self-service center and hovers over their award, it will tell them also what the renewability criteria of that particular award is. So generally speaking, these awards are renewable for 4 years, but again, the student must meet those minimum academic requirements based on the award type. Another part of the financial aid process that it is likely you have already gone through is an application for need-based financial aid funding. So need-based financial aid funding is based on the results of the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA form. It is not too late if you haven't completed a FAFSA form, but you think you want to apply for need-based funding. We certainly are still accepting applications, and we certainly would still review a student for need-based financial aid. You will see on the screen now, studentaid.gov is where that application is completed. If the student needs assistance with that, we certainly are happy to help walk them through that process. Based on the results of the FAFSA, the Office of Financial Aid will review students for all types of institutional, federal, and state funding. In regards to state funding, one of the big questions we get is whether or not state funding is available from states outside of Connecticut, and the answer to that is generally no. Connecticut doesn't share, so most other states don't share with us either. So generally speaking, students only from Connecticut are receiving any type of state grant funding. That being said, need-based financial aid is generally renewable from year to year, as long as the information that's on the FAFSA stays relatively the same as well. So what I mean by that is if there is a job loss, let's say, and things shift, we would review the student for additional need-based grant funding. If there is some lottery winnings, which would be great, and you probably would need a lot less need-based financial aid, we certainly would adjust in that direction as well. But if there's no major changes and just slight fluctuations in terms of the amount that the family is earning in income from year to year, the need-based financial aid award should stay the same. Now, I will just make a quick plug here that the FAFSA form does need to be completed every year. So unfortunately, you're not quite done with the FAFSA just yet. So every academic year, the student does need to complete the FAFSA form by April 1st. So what does that mean? That means by April 1st of the student's first year, they need to have their FAFSA into our office so that we can review them for financial aid for their second year. The FAFSA does become available on October 1st of every year. I'm sure you all know that if you've already gone through this process. So the sooner you get it done, the less you have to worry about it later on in the academic year. I do want to talk specifically about one type of need-based financial aid, and that is employment. So employment opportunities at the University of Hartford include both the Federal Work-Study program as well as just on-campus part-time employment opportunities. And so let me explain the difference to you. In some cases, as part of the student's financial aid award, they may have received a federal work-study funding. Federal work-study is funding provided to the university from the U.S. Department of Education, and we do give it to students who are demonstrating a financial need. Students then can work on campus and they'll actually earn a biweekly paycheck. So students will get paid state of Connecticut minimum wage at $14 per hour based on the number of hours they work. Every 2 weeks, they'll earn a paycheck and they can use that funding to help pay for educational expenses. Most of the time when I'm talking with families, I'm talking to them about using federal work-study for what we call additional educational expenses. So things like books and supplies, or let's say personal expenses, or so that they don't have to call home to mom and dad for some additional spending money when they're on campus. Students can certainly use that funding to make payments directly towards their student account, but the majority of students will use that again for those other educational expenses. Students are given an allotment and they will have to work a certain number of hours to earn the full allotment. So they won't see it posted or coming off of their bill throughout the course of the billing process. And Katie is going to go into a little bit more detail about how you see things posted to the bill. But again, you will not see federal work-study there. Now, if you think that your family demonstrates a financial need, but you don't see federal work study as part of the financial aid award, we do have a waiting list for those funds, and we certainly are happy to put the student on it. Unfortunately, we do have a limited amount of funding, but we do have a wait list, and generally speaking, we tend to take almost every student off the wait list by the start of the fall semester. So certainly worth the opportunity to reaching out to our office to be added to that wait list. We do hold an on-campus job fair in the fall. I don't know the exact date of it just yet. We're still in the planning stages, but students should be on the lookout for that. And again, that's all on-campus job opportunities. Some of them will be federal work study based, but some of them will just be on-campus part-time employment. So for students who don't have work study or maybe not eligible, you certainly can still work on campus, doing the same thing, earning that biweekly paycheck. That being said, the number of on-campus part-time employment opportunities are a little bit more limited as compared to federal work study opportunities, but places like our food service areas on campus, our library, occasionally our athletics department do offer on-campus part-time employment opportunities for students who don't have work study. I'd also like to talk a little bit about another need-based financial aid program that we review students for, and that is our federal direct loan program. So any student who completes a FAFSA form is automatically reviewed for our federal direct loan program. These are loans that are in the student's name. They do not require a cosigner. They do not require a credit check. They do require repayment. So for students who are borrowing on this particular loan program, they do have to begin repayment 6 months after graduation. There are two types of kind of loan programs that exist under the federal direct student loan program, and that is the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. One of the big questions that we always get from families is, what is the difference between the two? And I'll tell you, the subsidized loan does not have interest while the student is in school. The unsubsidized loan does have interest while the student is in school. Another common question we get regarding these loan opportunities is, can they be increased? Can I get more? No, the answer is no. Unfortunately, we do maximize the amount that a student can receive, and those are limits set by the U.S. Department of Education. So again, these are federal loan opportunities in the student's name. There is no cosigner required. There is no credit check required. The student does have to complete a loan agreement or a master promissory note and an entrance counseling in order for these loans to apply to their account. They are completed through studentaid.gov. You're going to notice that's a theme throughout the rest of the presentation. There's lots of things that are done there for the financial aid process, but students should have already received an email from our office letting them know that if they did accept these loan programs, that they do have to complete that loan agreement and entrance counseling online. So that's something that they should be doing, within the next week or two to make sure that their aid is all set for the fall semester. So I do want to just mention a little bit more about the financial aid credits. So I mentioned before that you would not see federal work study posted to the bill. So let me explain how that works. Essentially, what's going to happen is over the next couple of weeks, you are going to get a copy of the first semester bill. Financial aid, however, cannot release to a student's account until 10 days prior to the start of the term. So all financial aid will show as a pending transaction until that 10-day prior point. And right now that's scheduled for August 15th of 2022. So Katie will go into more detail about this, but I do want you to know that financial aid is going to show up as only as pending, only because right now we can't release financial aid. That being said, it's going to stay as pending until the student completes all of the required documentation. So I mentioned previously that entrance counseling and that loan agreement. Financial aid will never apply to a student's account until they complete that requirement. So it is important that they get that done so that financial aid can officially hit their account on that August 15th date.
Thanks so much, Catherine. So pretty much everything Catherine just talked about, we're through that period of time, right? Through the admission process when a student would have been reviewed for academic and talent-based scholarships. For the most part, we're through, you filling out the FAFSA and being awarded any need-based aid that goes along with that. And so now it's time to talk about tuition charges and what that looks like from your perspective this summer going into the fall. One note, if you haven't filled out the FAFSA already, there probably, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, is still time to fill that out if you would like to be reviewed for any need-based aid that might still be available to you.
Nope, you're right.
Okay, cool, thanks. So getting into the tuition and fees and how all of that breaks down. The way that we bill, you're going to be looking at the regular tuition, which is just the charges for the courses that the student is taking. And then there will be some fees associated with attendance. This is very typical for universities, and we are just one of the universities that structures it this way. So there will be a registration fee, a technology fee, some student support services fees that will differ depending on whether your student is residential or whether they're a commuter. So these are fees associated with some of the extra services of being on campus as a student. Then there may be some school-specific fees related to if your student is part of the Hillier College or part of the Hart School, and potentially some fees that are specific to a course. Sometimes those are listed as lab fees, but they may not be attached to a class that actually has a lab associated with it. So it's a little bit of a misnomer, but some courses require some additional materials, resources, and support to administer the course. And so there may be a small fee that's charged just specific to that course. Then if your student is going to be living on campus, there will be charges associated with the room and board. So it's their housing and then any meal plan that they're choosing. So if a student is living on campus, they are required to have a meal plan, and we want to make sure everybody has access to the food that they need. We have some great meal plan options. Students are going to be defaulted into one particular plan, but they can make a change if they would like to up to the first 2 weeks of classes. So I would encourage you, and I know Dining Services is going to be doing some presentations throughout the summer, and will also, always be available to answer questions that anyone might have about the different meal plans and what might be the best fit for your family based on cost and based on benefits of those plans. We also do have meal plans available for commuter students. Sorry, Catherine. Just if a commuter student is going to be on campus for very long stretches of the day and would like to take advantage of a meal plan as well, I always think that's a nice idea and a good opportunity to, continue to socialize and make friends on campus through eating communal meals together in the dining hall. Okay, now you can go. Thank you. So electronic billing, we do all of our billing electronically. So it is a totally paperless process, which we are super happy about being able to do it that way. But we also just want to make you aware of what to expect because it's going to start in the next couple of weeks. So students are actually going to get a billing email to their hartford.edu email account. So if your student hasn't already been signing in and checking their hartford.edu email account, they need to be doing that right away. So I would encourage you, sit with your student, help them sign in if they're having any difficulty signing in, remembering passwords. There's time to get that figured out. I don't want anybody to be blindsided, and not be able to sign in and see what they need to see when the time comes. So please make sure that you're working with your student to make sure they have access to that email account, because that is where the bill will go. The bill can also go to a parent if the student sets you up, or a parent or a guardian, or really anyone else who's going to be helping make payments to the tuition, as long as you're set up as an authorized payer. The student can set you up as an authorized payer, and you can have multiple authorized payers. And this would give you access to actually be able to log in on your own to the payment portal through what we call CashNet. And it would mean that you are going to also receive an e-bill. So if you're again sitting with your student, just going through some of these housekeeping things, I would suggest going through the self-service center through the CashNet link and setting up an authorized payer there. You may be wondering what a guest payer is. So this is the link you want, and take your screenshots now. When somebody says, well, what can I get Suzanne for her birthday this year? And it's money towards college tuition, this is the link you want to be giving out. So we can have people come in and just make a one-time payment. Maybe it's a gift, or a friend, family, relative wants to make a payment towards the tuition for any particular semester. So this link is a little bit different than being an authorized payer, because this doesn't mean that they have access to any of the account information. It just means that they can go in with a student ID and last name and make a one-time payment of whatever amount they choose, and not without having, to see any of the billing or any other information associated with the account. So as I mentioned, in just the next couple of weeks is when we're going to be starting this process. So bills are expected to go out around July 7th. So this is the time you want to be checking. If you can get set up as an authorized payer between now and then, great. Then you get a copy of the bill yourself at whatever email account you've set up. If not, and you just want to sit with your student and log in, make sure they've gotten the email on July 7th, and you can go in and view the bill. These bills are payable by July 29th. And I'm going to show you a sample bill and what to expect. We bill on a semester by semester basis. So the bill that you get in July is going to be all about the fall semester. Then there will be another bill in December that will be all about the spring semester. So all those charges that I talked about, tuition fees, room, board, et cetera, it's all split down the middle between the fall and the spring. And so is the financial aid. So the financial aid that Katherine was talking about, you get a full year award. That's what you saw in your award letter. If you had a scholarship that was awarded at the time of admission, that's going to be split evenly between the fall and the spring. You'll also continue to get a bill every month as long as there's unpaid charges on the account. So if you're continuing to get a bill, that's something you want to look at, because it probably means that something still needs to be taken care of. So here it is in all its glory. This is what our bill looks like. This is what you can expect to see. These are sample charges. These may not reflect the specific tuition and fees that you would see, or your specific aid package will look different. But we put this up so that you get a sense for what to expect. And I'm going to walk you through kind of all the different things that we've talked about in this presentation and where you can see that they fall. So first you'll see, and it may be listed in a different order on your bill, but you'll see that technology fee that I mentioned, a student support services fee. Here's an example of a lab fee. That's a small fee that's attached to a particular course. We've got the tuition fee. I skipped over the student medical insurance. I'm going to come back to that. Don't worry. We've got a room charge. We've got this what's called the 7-day all access plan that represents a meal plan. And then we've got a credit here, a payment that's gone on because there was that tuition deposit that you paid, $100 of which does go directly to the tuition for the fall semester. So coming back to that student medical insurance, I do want to make a note about this. All of our students are required to have medical insurance, and we will provide it and bill for it on that July bill. But you may have already received an email, and if not, you will in the next couple of weeks, about how to waive out of that insurance if you have medical insurance of your own, if the student has insurance that they're going to be on through their family's plan. So there is a process to go in and waive that so that that charge will come off the bill, and you will not be responsible for paying that other charge. Okay, so then below this line, you see pending transactions here. And then everything else is a credit or a payment on the account. This is all of that aid that Katherine was just talking about. So a Hawk Achievement Grant being a scholarship, and then we've got examples of a subsidized and unsubsidized loan that has gone on. We've got a federal Pell Grant on there, and then a university grant, which is one of those need-based awards, just as an example of what that looks like. So you see all of that showing up in payments and credits, but it is pending. It hasn't yet paid to the account because, as Katherine said, it does not pay to the account until 10 days prior to the start of the semester. So then what this is doing at the bottom is it's saying a current balance. Okay, so that's all of these charges that are up at the top. And then amount now due is saying all of these charges minus these pending transactions that we expect to come through, the amount due is the remainder after the financial aid has been kind of preliminarily deducted. So something to keep in mind that I just want everyone to be aware of, the student does need to go in and accept their financial aid, especially those loans is very important because the loans will be an offered status and they will show up as pending until they are declined. So if you are not planning to take the loans, pay very close attention to this part of the bill, because the loans will likely, if they haven't already been declined, show up as a pending transaction. And I have seen some people have some confusion later on once they decline the loans and then the balance due goes up because those loans were actually showing up as a pending transaction for a period of time. So I just want to make you aware of that. Make sure you're paying close attention if you're in that position where you're planning not to accept the loans that have been automatically offered through the FAFSA process. I know I mentioned CashNet already, going through the self-service portal. So this is kind of an example screen. It's a little stretched out. Sorry about that on your screens there, of what CashNet looks like. So when you sign in, there's a couple of, when you click on overview or home off to the side, you can see on the left-hand navigation, all of these different options and places that you can go to set up different things through CashNet or to view different things. Now, I mentioned you're going to get this bill, and that's clearly like a PDF printout that we saw on the prior slide. What CashNet is going to show you is everything on that bill, but in real time. So whereas the bill is this static document that you're going to receive as a statement every month, as long as there is, an outstanding balance on the account, the CashNet page is going to show you in real time. If you've just gone in and made a payment, that's going to be reflected in CashNet, and you're going to see that deducted from your amount due right away. You don't have to wait for another bill to come to be able to see, how things are progressing on your account. So definitely spend some time in CashNet and getting comfortable with that system. You can also see any of your monthly statements. As you can see the red arrow there that points to the statements link. You can also see where you can make a payment, a history of different transactions. And then I'm going to go over payment plans in a little bit more detail. But this is also the place where if you click on My Account, you will be taken to a page where that's where the student can actually set up an authorized payer.
Thank you, Katie. So at this point, Katie and I have taken you through the initial financial aid process and being reviewed for all different types of financial aid. We have taken you through billing and what you can expect when you are billed for the fall semester. And now the question is, that amount now due that Katie mentioned, how do we cover that? And so that's where the financial aid office comes in, as well as our Center for Student Success, to talk with your family about different ways that you can finance your education. So first and foremost, again, it is the role of the financial aid office to help figure out what works best for your family. And the majority of our students, as I mentioned earlier, are using a combination of all different types of financial aid opportunities to help cover their costs. So in some cases, that might be additional loan options, which I'm going to go over in detail on the next slide. In some cases, that might be additional scholarship opportunities that students might pursue, and then different payment plan options that the university participates in. So just to kick it off with some ways that you can cover that amount now due with different loan options, I'd first like to go over with you the Federal Direct Plus loan. The Federal Direct Plus loan is an opportunity for parents to borrow from the U.S. Department of Education to help cover the student's costs to attend the university. So the parent is the borrower. What that means is that the parent has the obligation for repayment on this particular loan. Unlike the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan that I talked about earlier, this particular loan does require an additional application in order to be approved for the loan. So the loan application is completed online through studentaid.gov. I told you that was going to be a theme throughout the presentation this evening. So you'll complete that application as the parent. So the parent will log into studentaid.gov using their information and using their credentials, their social security number, email address, etc. And they will go through the application process. At the end of the application, you will automatically know if you've been approved or denied. I want to talk a little bit about being approved for that loan. So first and foremost, if you are approved for that loan, you can use that loan to cover the full amount of the student's cost to attend the university, or whatever amount that you would like. Let's say your family has, let's say, $5,000 put aside to help cover some of the costs, and you'd like to borrow the rest on a loan. We can help you kind of sort that out and figure out exactly how much you should be requesting as part of this particular loan. I'd also like to talk about how you can be approved for this loan. So in order to be approved for this loan, they are not looking at things such as credit score or debt to income ratio. What they are looking at is the absence of adverse credit. So what does that mean? It means no foreclosures, no bankruptcies, no accounts and collections more than 60 days past due, and no previously defaulted student loans. So regardless of your credit score, regardless of your income information, if those things are missing from your credit history, you are likely to be approved for this particular loan program. In the event you are denied for this loan program, you have a few options. First and foremost, you can appeal that denial. And we have seen many denials overturned by the U.S. Department of Education because maybe you had something in collections, but you've since resolved it. You provide documentation, they overturn the denial. You can use a creditworthy endorser, so someone to basically co-sign on the loan for you as the parent. The third option that students can pursue is if their parent is denied the parent loan, they do become eligible for an additional $4,000 in that unsubsidized direct loan that I mentioned before. So I said that that was the maximum that a student can get as part of their financial aid award letter. That is true unless the parent is denied the parent loan. In terms of interest, the interest rate is fixed over the life of the loan. You'll see what that interest rate is on the screen at this point. And you can defer payments while the student is in school. So if you don't want to make payments while the student is in school, certainly you can defer those payments and not begin repayment until the student graduates. Much like the subsidized and the unsubsidized, there is a loan agreement or a master promissory note that needs to be completed in order for the loan to be applied to the account. So right now we're getting lots of federal direct plus loan applications. We're working diligently to get those applied so that you can see them as a pending transaction. But it does usually take our office between 24 and 48 hours to receive an approved or denied loan application. And it'll all be taken care of by us once we receive the actual application from the U.S. Department of Education. Another opportunity that many families consider pursuing in order to help cover their educational costs are what we call private or alternative loans. These are a little bit different than the loan opportunities we've discussed previously because these loans are not through the U.S. Department of Education, so they are not federal loan opportunities. These particular loans are through outside lenders. So some that you might recognize would include Wells Fargo student loans, SoFi student loans, Discover student loans, just to name a couple of them. So again, these are private lenders or private banks. These loans are specific to students and the student is the borrower in most cases. That being said, these loans for the student will be credit-based. So the student does need to go through a credit check in order to be approved or denied for the loan. That being said, the majority of students do need a creditworthy cosigner that can cosign on the loan, just because they simply have not had enough time to build up enough of a credit history to be approved for the loan without a cosigner. And the cosigner can be anybody. It can be a parent, it can be a grandparent, aunt, uncle, a really generous family friend who is willing to cosign on the loan for the student. We do maintain a list of suggested lenders on our website, and certainly any one of the financial aid counselors that I mentioned earlier can help walk the student through different opportunities. We will not tell you who you should choose as a lender. What we will do is we will give you some things to think about in regards to choosing a lender. So some of the things we would tell you to think about would be, what is the interest rate range? Unlike the federal loan opportunities, they're not always a fixed interest rate. Sometimes it's a variable interest rate, and sometimes the range is between 6 and 12%. So something that you want to be thinking about as you're going through this process. The other thing you want to think about is repayment options. So does a student need to begin repayment while they are in school, or can they defer payment until after they graduate? Is there a cosigner release? So cosigner release is something that is relatively new to the private or alternative loan industry. And basically what it means is that students might graduate and make a certain amount of on-time consecutive payments, and then basically reapply for the loan without their cosigner on that particular loan anymore, so that the cosigner no longer has an obligation should the student default or not make payments on the loan. And then also there are certain fees associated with each loan. So something to think about as you're going through. These loans will show as pending once it is received by the lender. So what that means is we get the application, we process the application, it would then show as pending, but we don't actually apply the funds into the student account regardless of timing. So even if it's after August 15th, we won't apply the funds until the lender actually sends the funds directly to the university. So again, just something to keep in mind as you're going through this process. I'd like to also talk about an opportunity for students to apply for additional scholarships. Over the next couple of weeks, students can certainly be looking into applying for additional scholarships, but I will say a lot of the scholarship opportunities for the fall semester Sorry about that. I had to plug in my computer. A lot of the scholarship opportunities for the fall semesters have deadlines that have already passed. But when we talk about applying for additional scholarships, I'm talking about applying to local scholarships, maybe local to your hometown, maybe civic organizations, or maybe a church that your family is involved in. Maybe the student has already worked with their school counseling office at their high school to apply for these. So these might be, additional $500, maybe $1,000. Sometimes they require additional essays or transcripts or recommendations, that sort of thing. Certainly the Office of Financial Aid can help them with that. That being said, anything that they receive will be applied to that amount now due. So generally speaking, unless the student is getting some type of full tuition scholarship or full tuition fees, room and board scholarship from some civic organization, we're not going to make any adjustments to the financial aid that they have already received from us. So their academic scholarship would not be impacted by that or any of the need-based financial aid, generally speaking. So any additional scholarships, again, just helps to bring down that amount now due. One thing I will say is that students generally forget about applying for these additional scholarships once they're out of high school and they don't have their school counseling office sending them things through Naviance or reminding them to apply for additional scholarships. So I always tell families, keep this in mind for future years. I always say the break between fall semester and spring semester is a great time to start searching for additional scholarships for the next academic year, and just trying to make sure they're maximizing the amount of scholarships that they're getting.
Okay, so we have gone over a ton of information already. So I'm just going to recap this at like a 30,000 foot view. So we kind of get a sense of how we got here to where we are now. So we started out talking about all the financial aid that you've already kind of gone through the process of receiving, whether it be merit-based or need-based aid as a result of the FAFSA. Then we talked about the charges that you're going to see come out on this bill. And now we're in this point of, okay, how can I cover the remaining balance after the financial aid that I already know about has been applied? What are my other options? And so what Katherine just went over are the loan-based options. What I'm going to go over now are, and also the additional scholarship funding. What I'm going to go over now are some sort of what I'll say cash-based options, or how to make payments directly through monies that you may have saved or that you may be coming in monthly to help cover the rest of the balance. But I want to just mention that pretty much everybody that I know, and Katherine, I think most of the people that you work with as well, are using a variety of these options in combination to make those payments. So maybe you're going to make some monthly payments, but you're also going to have some amount in a loan. Maybe you'll get some outside scholarships as well. So this is not a pick one of these options and that's your plan. This is these are the different options that are available to you, and you might draw from a little from column A, a little from column B, a little from column C, and it might fluctuate semester to semester. So just please keep that in mind as we continue to talk about these things. Some of the other payment options that I'll go over now generally are available through the Student Self-Service Center. Again, I know I keep mentioning that Self-Service Center. One option is an ACH payment or an electronic check. So we are able to accept online payments where, just like when you go online and pay a bill, it's linking that bank account information through the account number and the routing number to be able to make a payment. We also accept credit card payments. That is accepted through CashNet, but just be aware that there is a 2.75% service fee that's charged by CashNet when there is a credit card transaction that's placed. Other options that we can talk about, you can mail a check in. We accept them right in the Center for Student Success. You can drop off a check if you would like, or you're welcome to mail something in, attention to Center for Student Success, and we will post that on the student's account. So you'll usually see that within 2 weeks, I would say, of putting it in the mailbox, just depending on the speed of the mail. Students or family members can also pay in person at the Center for Student Success, but we are not able to take credit card payments in person due to regulations around credit card payments. There's also that wire transfers or, transferring funds from other accounts. And there's that 529 plan. So if you've got a 529 plan, I saw a question that was raised about this a little bit earlier in the presentation. What you'll want to do is go through the portal of where your 529 plan is managed, and they can actually cut a check, and you can direct that check to be sent to the University of Hartford. Usually what we see is that, in like the memo line or somewhere associated with sending that check over, there's a place for the student's ID number. As long as we know which student to associate that check with, we can accept those 529 plan checks. Again, the Bursar's office or the Center for Student Success can post 529 plan payments. If you're having any trouble with, trying to navigate that process at the individual level, please just give us a call and we're happy to help you with that as well. And the last option, and one that I know is really popular, so I saved it for last, is we call it the full service payment plan. So what that means is just being able to take that total amount and break it up into smaller payments. So there's several different payment options, so numbers of payments that are available to you. There's a 5 payment, a 4 payment, and a 3 payment option. Obviously, the more payments you're making, the smaller those payments are going to be, because they all have to get you to that same end result of the amount that is owed. The payment plan, there is a cost to enroll. It's just a $40 enrollment fee per term. So for the fall semester, for the spring semester, there's no monthly fees or other fees or interest or anything like that that's associated with being on the payment plan. And we are able to see in the account that a payment plan is set up and in good standing. As long as those payments are being made, there won't be late fees that are charged just because it's taking, 5 months to pay off that balance. So this is a pretty tight timeline, right? The bill's coming out July 7th, 5 payment option has to be set up by July 15th. So that's why I really want to make sure everybody's on the ball. But just know that you don't have to wait until July 7th to start setting up that payment plan. It's available right now. So if you would like, you can give the Center for Student Success a call, you can give financial aid a call. Any of us would be happy to do sort of an estimate of charges for you, what you can expect based on the classes that your student's going to be taking, what meal plan you're expecting them to have, where they're planning to live. And we'll go through an estimation process with you and deduct out that financial aid that we know is going to apply to the account. And we'll give you a sense of what you can expect to owe, which can help you set up a payment plan. If it turns out we were off by $10, $15, $20 or something, you can go back in and adjust the payment plan once the bill is released. It's not like set in stone. So you are able to go in and make adjustments after that. So I do, if you're worried about it, give us a call. We'll work out an estimate with you, and then you can just confirm it when the July 7th bill comes out. Something else to mention. So I know I talked about how we do a lot of kind of mix and matching here with making those payments that are due on the account. So let's say, for example, you might have a certain amount of money that you can contribute monthly to the student's tuition, but it's not going to be enough to cover the full balance. Well, I still think that's a good option to do some monthly payments if you're able, because it just can reduce the amount that you might need to take out in a loan or the amount that you might be seeking in an outside scholarship. So for example, if you've got $100 or $200 a month that you're able to put in the payment plan, great, go ahead and do that and make those payments. And then we can help you figure out the math to take out a loan that's going to be less than that, right? So if you're doing $200 a month for 5 months, that's $1,000 in a loan that you wouldn't have to take out. We could take out a loan for a little bit less money. And again, that's kind of how you see that mixing and matching start to happen.
Thank you, Katie. So just a couple of kind of final pieces of the financial aid puzzle that I want to mention. First and foremost, I've already spoken a little bit about this, but just want to reiterate the importance of having the student check the self-service center regularly, but also that there are potentially missing documents on the student's financial aid account that need to be completed before financial aid can be processed on the student's account. So again, we've already sent out one email to the student, so they should have been notified to log into self-service to view. If there is something missing, make sure that they're checking their email, but go ahead and get them logged into self-service just to make sure. At the very least, if the student is borrowing on the federal direct subsidized or unsubsidized loan program, then they do need to complete that entrance counseling and master promissory note or loan agreement. I did also mention earlier in the presentation that I was going to talk a little bit about minimum academic standards, and that is what we call satisfactory academic progress. So at all financial aid, regardless of if some scholarships have that higher GPA threshold, all financial aid will not be renewed on a student unless they are meeting minimum academic standards. And it is going to vary by the school or college in which the student is admitted to and pursuing a degree in. But academic progress is twofold. The first is a measure of a cumulative GPA, and the second is a measure of the successful completion of credits for each academic year. So in terms of GPA, it is generally speaking a 2.0 for, again, that is the minimum standard. For most schools and colleges. Some have higher standards. So it is up to the student to work with their first year advisor, or work with the school or college in which they've been admitted to figure out what those standards might be, because it is going to vary slightly. In terms of the successful completion of credits, it is between 24 and 28 credits per academic year, depending upon the student's major. So for example, some of our engineering programs do have a higher minimum credit threshold in order to keep the student on track for graduation. And again, just remember that some of our scholarships also have that higher GPA, and it's up to the student to either log into self-service to figure out what that GPA is, or talk with their financial aid counselor or first year advisor to figure that out as well.
Refunds. So what in the world is a refund? You probably saw this title slide and thought, oh, okay, yes, I'd like to know about how to get some money back. But it's really how to take money that look like, or why that might be useful to you, is when thinking about paying for books, for example. So maybe you've gone through all this process and you've taken out a Parent Plus loan, or the student's taken out a loan in their name, and they're going to have all of that go on pay to their student account directly, but it's going to more than cover the tuition, and they want to use some of it for books. So once that money goes onto the student's account, it will create a credit balance if there's money that's going onto the account that's in excess of what is owed. And then the student can, through the Center for Student Success, request a refund, and then we will help them get that money back. So we use a third-party service, Bank Mobile, to actually send them the refunds. It's much faster that way. We used to cut more checks, and it just took a lot longer to actually get the money in the hands of the students. But when you're talking about buying books or buying supplies, there's not a lot of time to spare. So by using Bank Mobile, we're able to have that those funds transfer electronically, and that's a lot faster. So just a couple of days delay in terms of getting those funds back when there is a credit balance on the account. So they'll set up their refund preference through Bank Mobile. Usually that's going to be direct deposit into an existing bank account. And then just a quick note on an optional something that you can consider, and I want you to think about it just as a family. You know your situation, better than Katherine or I will, but it is an option that's available, and that's a tuition protection plan or tuition insurance. So is who we partner with, and really what it is if a student has to withdraw from the university at a time when tuition is no longer able to be refunded in all or in part, then the tuition protection plan or the tuition insurance would then kick in. So think of it as kind of similar to travel insurance, where you've invested a whole lot in whatever you're planning, and then you want to get some insurance just in case something happens, because you never know. There could be an injury or an illness or a mental health concern that requires a student to withdraw for the semester at a time when there would not be a tuition refund available, and you would really want to be protecting that investment. So just like travel insurance, this is how the tuition protection plan would function, and there's some information on the slide here where you can go to learn a little bit more about that, to evaluate the plan to see if it would be a good fit for your family. And we've reached our Q&A time. So I see there are some questions already in the Q&A. One question here that's about if there's a bank on campus. We don't have a bank that's located on campus where students can, meet with a teller and do banking transactions that way, but we do have Bank of America ATMs on campus. So if you're just trying to think about going to have easy access to, we have Bank of America ATMs on our campus, but there are a couple of local banks and a Bank of America branch that are just about a mile away from campus.
Just going to jump in. I do see a question regarding the counseling for the federal direct loan program. So the counseling is done online through studentaid.gov. Basically, it just goes over for the student what it means to be a student loan borrower, their rights and responsibilities as a student loan borrower, and gives them lots of information. So they're going to do a lot of reading and a lot of answering questions as they go through the process. And the master promissory note or loan agreement is very similar. It gives them lots of information about, what it means to be a student loan borrower, what they can expect when repayment begins, that sort of thing. I do also see a question here regarding the meal plan costs for commuters versus residents. So there are specific commuter meal plans that do have less meals per week. And so they don't have to have such a high meal plan if they'd like to pursue that. Certainly they can, but I do just want to mention too, in the many of the dining facilities on campus, students can just use cash if they'd like to eat on campus as well. I see a question here regarding the Federal Direct Plus loan. So that's that loan for parents. Yes, you have to apply every year, not every semester. So when you get that bill, as Katie mentioned, it's going to show a total amount now due. That total amount now due is only for the fall semester. Generally speaking, you're going to double that, and that's going to tell you how much you will owe for the full academic year. So you will apply for a loan for the full academic year. At the end of the academic year, so at the end of the spring semester, you'll get a new financial aid award for year 2. You'll re-go through this process all over again, and you'll apply for another Federal Direct Plus loan for year 2. I see a question here about, is there any way to help finance the student health insurance? I think your question is hopefully that can you borrow loans to help cover the student health insurance, or can you set up a payment plan to help cover the student health insurance? And the answer to that is yes. There are no specific grant and scholarship opportunities specific to the health insurance, but since it's applied to the student's bill, they can use those additional loan opportunities or the payment plan to help cover those costs. I see a question here regarding if you select to use a payment plan, do you set it up directly with the financial aid counselor? And the answer is no. So the payment plan is set up directly through CashNet. So while financial aid or the Center for Student Success can help you set up the payment plan or give you guidance in setting up the payment plan, or give you information about what your monthly costs might be based on the current account balance, we can't actually set it up for you. They should do that directly. The student could do that directly through CashNet, or the parent set up as an authorized payer can do that directly through CashNet.
I have a question, just going back to our discussion about the payment plans, going over the 5, 4, and 3 payments for certain dates. Yes, so to get the 5 payment plan, you would need to set up the payment plan by July 15th. To get 4 payments, it would need to be set up by August 15th. So like between July 15th and August 15th. And then 3 payments would have to be set up by September 15th.
I see a question here that says, we are in the process of applying for a personal loan. Do we still have time? And the answer to that is yes. As Katie mentioned, that first July bill is not due until July 29th. So you should still have time to get the loan processed and into the university. If you're applying for a personal loan, so not a private student loan, then you'll handle that just like making a payment to the university. If you are applying for a student loan, depending upon the loan loan that you're applying for will depend on how quickly it's approved, which is another question that has come in. So if you apply for the parent loan, that Direct Plus loan for parents, again, we should get notification of either the approval or the denial within 24 to 48 hours. Give us some time. We've got lots of loans coming in, but we will get that processed usually within a couple of weeks. So you still have plenty of time. Private loans can take a little bit longer, but similarly, you should know by the end of the application if you've been approved or denied for that particular private loan opportunity. And then typically our office is notified within 48 hours, and then we would work directly with the lender to get it processed from there. In terms of applying for the Direct Plus loan for parents, that is done online through studentaid.gov, which is, yes, the same website used to complete the FAFSA form. If you're applying for the parent loan, though, make sure you are logging in as the parent. So do not use the student's login credentials. We will get the loan application and we will have to delete the application. It will not be valid. So just make sure that when you're logging in as the parent. There's a question here about what is the average estimate cost of books and supplies. That's a great question. We usually say about $550 per semester. That being said, of course, there's lots of ways that you can save money in regards to covering the cost of books, for example, renting books or buying used. And it's also going to vary by major and vary by the classes that a student's taking in a semester, but we usually say about $550 per semester.
I have a question here that's asking if you don't get a loan, do you have to let CashNet know? No, you don't have to let CashNet know if you don't get a loan. So I want to make sure I'm getting this question. So if I give an answer that doesn't make sense and you still have another question, please feel free to follow up with us in the Q&A. But if you apply for that Parent Plus loan and are denied, then that's something we would be made aware of after the application has been filed. Katherine, stop me if I say anything that's not correct. I feel like I'm wading into your territory here a little bit. But then the student would then automatically be able to be considered for that additional funding, but that would not be something that happens through CashNet. CashNet's just the portal that we use where you can view the bill and make payments directly to the bill. So hopefully I answered that question, but if you still have more questions or I didn't get it exactly right, please feel free to type in another question.
I see a question here about the meal plan and whether or not it's subject to price fluctuations. If the student keeps the same meal plan for both fall and spring semester, then no, it's not going to fluctuate. Of course, things can fluctuate from academic year to academic year. So that can change from academic year to academic year, but not mid-year. So as long as the student keeps the same meal plan, it will stay the same. Okay, I see a question here. How could a student make payments to the interest portion of an unsubsidized loan prior to graduation? That is a great question, and we always encourage students to do that if the opportunity is there for them to do so. Basically, I would suggest that the student contact our office and speak with their financial aid counselor, but we will direct them to a website where they will log in using their FAFSA credentials. The website is called the National Student Loan Database. In the National Student Loan Database, they will see all of their loans, but they will also see the servicer of their loan. So while the U.S. Department of Education is the lender on the loan. They do have all of these servicers, and that's where the student can make payments. So they'll be able to find out who their servicer is and work directly with the servicer to make payments pre-graduation. I see a couple of questions just about timing of the parent loan. So if the parent loan application comes in right now, we are working diligently to get them onto the student account. I can't guarantee it'll be fully posted by the July 7th billing, but if you get it into us within the next week or so, it will be posted before the bill is due on July 29th. You can always contact our office though to make sure that we reviewed the application or we received the application and that we don't see any issues with it. It just takes us some time to go through all of the many applications that we're getting. I see a question here that says we've sent our FAFSA to other schools, but our son will be attending UHART. What is the next step? Make sure that our school code is on the FAFSA. Our school code is 001422, but you can also search for it directly in the FAFSA website. Make sure our school code is on it and then give our office a call. Once our school code is on it, we should get it within 48 hours. We can go ahead and process a need-based financial aid award for the student. I see a question here about whether or not a scholarship award is going to be increased based on academic performance each year. Generally speaking, no. The scholarship award that a student receives at their time of admission is going to stay the same. That being said, for students who are entering their second, third, and fourth year, we do have some donor-based scholarship funds. Those funds are a bit smaller, maybe between $1,000 and $2,000 per academic year. And we will send information out to students. We do have an online scholarship portal, which students can use beginning with their second year to try to match to some of those donor-based scholarships. And so those would be small increases. Yes, academic performance is certainly considered in being selected for those donor-based scholarships, but need levels are as well.
I have a question here about the 4 payment and the 3 payment plan options. And if we don't have to make, set up the 4 payment or the 3 payment plan until, August and September, then what happens to this bill that's due on July 29th? And that's a great question. So if you're able to make that 4 payment plan before August 15th, then you can always set it up, between July 15th and July 29th, which is going to be the most helpful. But the entire bill is really payable due by July 29th. So we run the risk of getting into a situation where there might be a hold on the student's account or there might be late fees with any unpaid balance that has been billed on July 7th. So while it does occasionally happen that, someone either missed the bill or has, deposited late and is starting at the university, and didn't receive a bill until much later in August. And those folks are still eligible for a 3 payment or 4 payment plan, just depending on the timing of that. But we really would want for everyone to be getting that in before July 29th. So if it's before July 15th, then that's going to be 5 payments. But if it's between the 15th and the 29th, that's going to be 4. And then just being aware that any outstanding balance that isn't covered by a loan or outside aid, or by the payment plan that's not set up by July 29th may be subject to a hold on the student's account or late fees that are associated with that. And if you have individual questions, that we can address more directly about your personal circumstances or anything like that, please do feel free to reach out to the Center for Student Success so we can look kind of more deeply into your personal account as well and just get any other questions answered that you have.
I see a question about whether or not I recommend the parent loans over the private loans. The answer to that is not necessarily. I certainly encourage families to utilize all federal options before any private options. If the last 2 years has taught us anything, it's that we never know when a pandemic might strike. And for those of you that don't know, federal student loans in terms of payments and interest has been temporarily suspended during the pandemic. And so many families who faced job loss and things like that, who had federal loans, did receive a benefit by having those loans over private loans. Many of the private lenders did not follow suit. So that's just something to keep in mind. I will say also with the federal student loans, there are some more flexible repayment options. So things like graduated repayment or income-based repayment, things like that, that some of the private lenders don't have. So it really is a family and personal decision. Sometimes if a family or the cosigner has a really strong credit history, the interest rate can be a little bit less on the private loans. But generally speaking, like I said, some of the repayment options are less flexible. So it really is going to vary. The email regarding bank mobile disbursement and getting money back from the university is what Katie was going over in regards to refunds. So no, that is not spam. We do use Bank Mobile as a third party in order to process refunds. That doesn't mean the student has a refund right now. It just means if in the future they ever have a refund for some reason, they would use Bank Mobile in order to get that funding back.
I see a question here that I think some others might have. If you waive the health insurance, is your personal insurance accepted at the on-campus health center? The answer is no, but neither is the insurance that is provided through the university. So the student health center, a lot of the services that students can receive there are covered through the student fees, but there may be some small fees that are associated with receiving certain types of tests or other care through health services. If they have to send something out to the lab, like blood work or something like that, then the lab would be able to bill your personal insurance for that.
Okay, Katie, any final questions that you like to get answered, or I guess we could do a last call for final questions this evening?
And we don't disappear after this evening. So you can always reach out to the Center for Student Success, Financial Aid, or the Bursar's office throughout the summer. There may be a question that we didn't get to answer tonight, or that you didn't think of tonight when you had us on the Zoom, and you want to be able to get that answered throughout the summer. Totally fine. Please reach out. This recording will be available through our website, and we hope to hear from you, about your individual questions and circumstances as well.
Well, in that case, thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope you found this informative, and we look forward to connecting with you over the next couple of months.